A millionaire arrives unannounced at his employee's house, and the scene he sees makes him cry. Matias Campos had never knocked on an employee's door unannounced, but that Thursday afternoon on a narrow street in Mexico City's doctor's neighborhood, there he was, holding an envelope with Gabriela Olmos's last paycheck. Over the years, Matias had built a restaurant empire that spanned the entire country. His life was timed by meetings, contracts, and numbers. Gabriela had worked cleaning his office for 3 years, always punctual, always quiet. The previous Monday, she simply stopped coming in. The doorman of the building where his company was located said that the girl was going through family problems. Matias tried to deposit her paycheck, but Gabriela's bank account was frozen. Something bothered him, perhaps because she had never missed a single day of work. The house at 47 Mercedera Street was small, with earth-colored walls and a faded blue door. Matias rang the bell twice and waited. He heard children's voices inside, laughter, and the sound of someone cooking. The door opened and Gabriela appeared, her eyes wide with surprise. She was 32 years old, with black hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and a flowery apron over a white blouse. For a second, neither of them said anything. "Mr. Campos," Gabriela finally said, her voice full of nerves. "What are you doing here?" Before Matias could answer, a boy of about 6 appeared behind her, followed by another smaller one, about 4, who clung to Gabriela's leg. Further back, he could see a third child, still a baby, sitting on the floor of the small room. "I brought your last paycheck," said Matias, holding up the envelope. "And I wanted to know if you were okay. You've never missed work before." Gabriela looked at the children and then at him, as if hesitating. "Sir, can I explain? It's just that Aunt Gabi—" "Who is he?" asked the older boy, looking at Matias curiously. "He's my boss, Gabriel," she replied in a low voice. Matias watched the scene. The house was modest but clean. The smell of beans and tortillas wafted from the kitchen. The children seemed well cared for, although they were dressed in simple clothes. Gabriela had her hand on the boy's shoulder in a natural protective gesture. "Can I come in?" asked Matias. "I'd like to talk to you." Gabriela hesitated for a moment, then nodded and stepped aside. "Of course, sir. Sorry for the mess." Matias entered the small living room. There were toys scattered on the floor, children's drawings stuck on the walls, and an old but comfortable armchair. The 4-year-old girl was still clinging to Gabriela's leg, looking at the stranger with big, curious eyes. "These children are—" Matias began to ask. "My nephews," Gabriela said quickly. "Gabrielle, Natalia, and little Omar. My sister Patricia had to travel to take care of our mother in Oaxaca. I'm in charge of them." Matias nodded, beginning to understand. "That's why you didn't go to work." "Yes, sir. I tried to find someone to look after them during the day." But she paused as if embarrassed. "I couldn't find anyone I could afford, and I couldn't leave them alone." Baby Omar began to cry from the living room floor. Gabriela went to him immediately, picked him up, and began to rock him gently. The child calmed down almost instantly, snuggling up against her. "How long have they been with you?" Matias asked. "A week," Gabriela replied, still rocking the baby. "Patricia said she'll be back in a month, maybe 2, depending on how my mom is doing." Gabriel, the 6-year-old boy, tugged at Gabriela's shirt. "Auntie, can I play in the yard?" "Sure, sweetie. Take Natalia with you, but stay where I can see you," Gabriela said affectionately. Matias watched her talk to the children. There was genuine tenderness in her voice, a patience he rarely saw. The children clearly loved her and trusted her completely. "Mr. Campos," Gabriela said, turning her attention to him. "I know I left my job without notice. It wasn't professional of me, but I didn't know what to do." "You didn't leave anything," Matias said, surprised at his own response. "You did what you had to do for your family." He looked around the house again. It was small, but there was love there. There was care. There was something his own empty mansion had never had. Gabriela said, "I'd like to make you a proposal." She looked at him expectantly, but also cautiously, settling the baby more comfortably in her arms. "What kind of proposal, sir?" Matias felt something stir inside him, a feeling he hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was compassion, maybe something deeper. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about business or profits. "Let's talk, but first, can I help you with anything here?" Gabriella looked at him as if he had spoken in another language, and Matthias realized that perhaps he had. Matthias found himself sitting at the small wooden table in Gabriella's kitchen, watching her prepare dinner for the children. She had insisted on offering him coffee, and now he was holding a mismatched cup while she chopped vegetables with quick, precise movements. "You don't have to stay, sir," Gabriella said for the third time. "I understand if you have important commitments." "I don't," Matthias replied, and that's when he realized it was true. His schedule was always full, but nothing seemed really important at that moment. Gabriel, the 6-year-old boy, came running in through the back door, followed by Natalia, who was carrying some little flowers she had picked in the yard. "Aunt Gabi, look what Nat found," Gabriel shouted excitedly. "How beautiful, my darlings," said Gabriella, drying her hands on her apron. "Shall we put them in water?" Matthias watched as she took a regular glass and filled it with water, letting Natalia carefully place the flowers in it. The girl smiled proudly, and Gabriella kissed her on the head. "Have you washed your hands?" she asked. "Oh, I forgot," Gabriel admitted. "Well, go wash up and take Natalia with you." Dinner is almost ready. The children ran off, and Matthias was left alone with Gabriella again. She returned to the stove, stirring a pot of beans. "They are well behaved," Matthias commented. "Patricia has always been a good mother," Gabriella replied, although she was very young when she had Gabriel, only 19, and their father, Gabriella, stopped stirring the beans for a moment. Gabriella and Natalia have different fathers, neither of whom are around. Omar is the son of Patricia's current husband, Esteban, who is a good man, but he also had to go to Oaxaca to work on the construction of a school. Matthias nodded, understanding the situation better. "And you never wanted to have children of your own?" The question slipped out before she could stop it, and she immediately regretted prying into her life. But Gabriella didn't seem offended. "I had other priorities," she said simply. "I studied at night for years to finish high school. Then I worked to help Patricia when she got pregnant with Gabriel. When I finally thought about having my own family," she shrugged. "Life didn't turn out that way." "You're still young," said Matthias. 32 isn't that young to start a family in Mexico," Gabriella replied with a somewhat sad smile. "But I don't regret my decisions. This family is my family." Baby Omar began to cry from his makeshift Moses basket in the living room. Gabriella immediately turned off the stove and went to attend to him. Matthias followed her and watched as she lovingly picked him up, checking to see if his diaper was dirty. "He's just hungry," she said, going to the small refrigerator and taking out a bottle. "Omar, do you know Mr. Matthias? He's Aunt Gabi's boss." The 1.5-year-old baby looked at Matthias curiously, sucking his thumb. Matthias approached him carefully. "May I?" he asked, holding out his finger. Gabriella nodded, and Omar grabbed Matthias's finger with his little hand. The grip was surprisingly strong, and Matthias felt something tighten in his chest. "He likes you," said Gabriella, warming the bottle. "How do you know? He doesn't grab just anyone's finger." Omar is a little shy with strangers. Matthias looked at the baby, who was now smiling at him, showing 2 little teeth. There was something about that innocent smile that made him feel different, lighter perhaps. Gabriel and Natalia came running back with clean hands and shining faces. "Can we eat now?" Gabriel asked. "Sure," Gabriella said. "Mr. Campos, would you like to have dinner with us?" "It's nothing fancy, but I'd love to," Matthias replied, surprising himself again. The table was small, so Matthias sat on a plastic chair that Gabriella brought from the kitchen. She served beans, rice, and handmade tortillas. The food was simple, but it had a homemade flavor that he hadn't tasted in years. Gabriel talked throughout dinner about school, friends, and a dog he saw on the street. Natalia was quieter, but she smiled a lot, especially when Gabriella made jokes or funny faces to make her laugh. "You're a great cook," Matthias told Gabriella. "I learned from my mom," she replied. "She always said that food made with love feeds you more than food made in a hurry." After dinner, Gabriella insisted on washing the dishes herself, but Matthias offered to help her dry them. She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of her former boss doing housework in her home. "I won't break anything," he said with a small smile. As they worked together in the small kitchen, Matthias found himself watching Gabriella. She was different in her own home, more relaxed, more talkative. At the office, she had always been friendly but distant, doing her work in silence. Gabriella finally responded to the proposal I mentioned, pausing from washing a dish. "I'd like you to come back to work for me, but not like before." "How then?" Matthias chose his words carefully. "I need someone to take care of my house. Not just to clean, but someone who can make it feel like home. And you could bring the children with you." Gabriella looked at him in surprise. "I'm serious, completely. The house is big, there's plenty of space. The children could play in the garden, swim in the pool, and you'd earn twice what you did before." For a moment, Gabriella said nothing. Matthias could see she was thinking, weighing the possibilities. "Why are you doing this?" she finally asked. Matthias stopped drying the plate he was holding. It was a fair question, and he wasn't sure how to answer it. Why was he doing this? "Why?" he said slowly. "I think we both need a change. Tell me, what city and country are you watching this video from?" "I'll read all the comments." Gabriella studied him carefully, as if trying to understand his true intentions. In the living room, they could hear Gabriel playing with building blocks and Natalia humming softly to Omar. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course, but Gabriella." Matthias hesitated. "Don't think about it too much. These children need stability, and you need it's a situation that can benefit everyone." She nodded, but Matthias could see that there were still doubts in her eyes, and he didn't blame her. It was an unusual proposal coming from a man she only knew as her boss. But as he watched Gabriella dry her hands on her apron and smile at the children in the living room, Matthias had the feeling that her life was about to change in a way she had never imagined. 3 days later, Matthias was standing on the balcony of his house in the hills, watching a small, slightly dented car approach the driveway. It was Saturday morning, and the sun was filtering through the jacaranda trees that shaded his elegant street. Gabriella had called on Friday to accept his proposal on one condition. She wanted to see the house first with the children to make sure it was a safe place for them. Matthias had agreed immediately. The car stopped in front of the house, and Matthias walked down the marble steps to greet them. Gabriella got out of the driver's side wearing a simple Sunday dress and flat sandals. She looked at the front of the house with her eyes slightly open. "Good morning, Mr. Campos," she said formally as always. "Good morning, Gabriella. Please call me Matthias," he said. "We're partners now." Gabrielle was the first to get out of the car, followed by Natalia, who was holding her aunt's hand tightly. Omar was in Gabriella's arms, looking around curiously. "Wow, what a big house," Gabriel exclaimed without any filter. "Gabriel, manners," Gabriella scolded him gently. "No, he's right," Matthias said with a smile. "It's a very big house, too big for one person." He led them through the front entrance. The foyer had a high ceiling with a crystal chandelier and a curved staircase leading to the second floor. Matthias observed the children's expressions. Gabriel was amazed, Natalia a little intimidated, and Omar was simply drooling on Gabriella's shoulder. "This is the main living room," explained Matthias, leading them into a spacious room with beige leather armchairs, a marble fireplace, and large windows overlooking the garden. "And here is the dining room." The dining room table could easily seat 12 people. Natalia hid behind Gabriella, clearly impressed by the size of everything. "It's very nice," Gabriella said politely, but Matthias could sense her caution. "Let's see the kitchen," he suggested. The kitchen was modern, with granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and a central island large enough to serve as a breakfast table. Gabriel immediately ran to the giant refrigerator. "Can I see what's inside?" Gabriel asked. Gabriella scolded him. "Of course," said Matthias, opening the refrigerator. It was practically empty, just a few bottles of water, beers, and frozen microwave meals. "Don't you cook, sir?" asked Gabriella. "Not much," admitted Matthias. "I usually order food delivery or eat at my restaurants." Gabriella ran her hand over the granite countertop, clearly impressed by the quality but still doubtful. "Let's go see the garden," suggested Matthias. They went out the back door, and the children were instantly excited. The garden was spacious, with a well-manicured lawn, a large pool with natural stone edges, and several fruit trees. "There are mangoes!" Gabriel shouted, running toward a mango tree laden with fruit. "And avocados," Natalia said timidly, pointing to another tree. "You can eat all the fruit you want," Matthias said. "The gardener comes twice a week, but there's always more fruit than I can eat." So Gabriella put Omar on the lawn, and the baby immediately began to crawl, exploring his new surroundings. She followed him closely, but Matthias could see that she was beginning to relax a little. "There's a tree house," Gabriel said, pointing to a large oak tree. "I had it built a few years ago," said Matthias. "I thought that maybe someday." "Well, you've never used it. Can I go up?" asked Gabriel, looking at Gabriella. "After lunch, if Mr. Matthias allows it," she replied. "Of course, and there's a safe ladder," assured Matthias. They went back inside, and Matthias took them to see the rooms on the second floor. The master bedroom was huge, with a full bathroom and private balcony, but he took them straight to the guest rooms. "I thought you could use these two rooms," he said, opening the door to the first one. "This one could be for Gabriel and the other for Gabriella and the girls." The rooms were spacious and bright, with comfortable beds and their own bathrooms. Gabriel immediately jumped on the bed to test how soft it was. "It's like a hotel," Gabriel exclaimed. "Get off there," Gabriella said. But Matthias raised his hand. "Let him try it. After all, it could be his bed." Gabriella looked around the room, then went out onto the small balcony overlooking the garden. Matthias followed her. "It's too much," she said quietly. "Very different from what we're used to." "I know," Matthias replied. "But maybe it's just what we all need, something different." She looked at him. "Can I ask you something, Mr. Matthias?" "Sure, why are you really doing this? A house like this must have cost millions. You could hire anyone, a professional nanny, someone with references." Matthias leaned on the railing, watching the children in the garden. Gabriel was trying to teach Natalia to do cartwheels on the lawn, while Omar chewed on blades of grass. "Do you want the honest answer?" he asked. "Yes, because in the last 3 days since I left your house, I haven't been able to stop thinking about how you took care of those children, how they trusted you, how you made them feel safe and loved." He paused. "I built all this," he said, pointing to the house. "But there was never any life inside. It's just a house and it's empty." Gabriella was silent for a moment. "And you think we can change that?" "I hope so," Matthias said sincerely. "You've already changed something in me just by letting me have dinner at your table." Downstairs, Natalia had managed to do a cartwheel and was laughing loudly, proud of herself. Omar applauded, sitting on the grass. "When would you like to start?" Gabriella asked. Matthias smiled, feeling a lightness in his chest that he hadn't felt in years. "How about tomorrow? But first, let's eat. I know a great place for tacos in the Zona Rosa. The kids will love it." Gabriella smiled back, and for the first time since they met, Matthias felt that she really saw him as a person, not just as her boss. "Okay," she said, "but I'll drive. That car of yours is very flashy." Matthias burst out laughing, a genuine laugh that echoed through the empty house, and for the first time in a long time, the sound was not lost in the void. A month later, Matthias's house had been completely transformed. The sound of little footsteps echoing through the marble hallways had replaced the silence that had once reigned. In the kitchen, the aroma of fresh coffee and sweet bread competed with the old smell of industrial cleaning products. It was Tuesday morning, and Matthias went downstairs for breakfast earlier than usual. He found Gabriella in the kitchen preparing breakfast while rocking Omar on her hip. The baby was playing with a wooden spoon, banging it against the countertop in an irregular but cheerful rhythm. "Good morning," said Matthias, adjusting his tie. "Good morning, Matthias," replied Gabriella with a smile. She had stopped calling him sir in the second week after he insisted several times. "The coffee is ready, and I made chilaquiles, as you requested. Where are the other two?" Gabriel is brushing his teeth, and Natalia is trying to choose a dress. She's at a stage where she wants to look pretty for school. Matthias poured himself some coffee and sat down at the kitchen island, where there were now 4 high stools instead of just one. During the first month, he had learned that mornings worked best when everyone ate breakfast together. Gabriel came running in, already dressed in his uniform, with his backpack on his back. "Good morning, Uncle Matthias," he said cheerfully. At first, the children called him Mr. Matthias, but after a few weeks, Gabriel began to call him Uncle naturally, and the other children imitated him. Matthias never corrected him. In fact, he secretly liked it. "Good morning, champ. Ready for the math test?" "I think so," said Gabriel, sitting down next to him. "Aunt Gabby helped me study last night." Natalia arrived a few minutes later wearing a pink dress with flowers and red sandals that didn't match at all, but she was radiant. "What a beautiful princess," said Matthias, and Natalia blushed and smiled. Gabriella served chilaquiles for everyone, and they had breakfast together talking about their plans for the day. It was a simple routine, but Matthias had discovered that those mornings were his favorite moments of the day. "I'll take the kids to school," Gabriella said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Then I'll go to the market to buy things for dinner. Is there anything special you'd like to eat?" "You always cook well," Matthias replied. "I trust your taste." It was true. In the last 30 days, Gabriella had not only transformed the house, but also his relationship with food. She cooked simple but tasty dishes, always asking if he liked them and adjusting the seasoning to his preferences. After the children left for school, Matthias was left alone with Gabriella and Omar. The baby was sitting on the living room floor playing with colorful blocks that Matthias had bought the week before. "Gabriella," Matthias said, sitting down on the couch, "can we talk?" She stopped arranging the cushions and sat down on a nearby armchair with Omar on her lap. "Sure, something's up." "Actually, yes, but nothing bad," she hastened to clarify. "It's just that I've been thinking about your sister's situation." Gabriella's face tensed a little. "What about Patricia's situation?" "Well, it's been a month since she left for Oaxaca, and from our conversations, it seems that your mom is going to need care for a long time to come." "Yes, that's true. My mom had a stroke and her recovery is slow. Patricia said it could take several more months." Matthias chose his words carefully. "And how do you feel about that?" Gabriella was silent for a moment, settling Omar on her lap. "I'm worried," she admitted. "Not just about my mom, but also about the kids. They're adjusting well here. Gabriel especially talks about you at school, about the house, about how he learned to swim in the pool. They're forming a routine bonds. And you? How do you feel about all this?" Gabriella looked around the spacious living room, then at Omar, who was trying to reach for a toy on the floor. Confused, she said honestly, "At first, I thought it would just be a temporary job until Patricia came back. But now," she paused, "now I feel like we're building something here. The kids are happy, you seem more relaxed, and I like cooking for you, taking care of the house, watching the children play in the garden." "I like it too," said Matthias quietly. They were silent for a moment, listening to Omar babble as he explored his toys. "Gabriella," said Matthias at last, "what if I told you that I'd like you to stay, not temporarily, but permanently?" She looked at him in surprise. "What?" As a family, he said, the words coming out faster than he had planned. "I know it may sound strange. I know we hardly know each other, but this last month has been the happiest I've had in years." Gabriella was very quiet, and Matthias began to worry that he had said too much too quickly. "Matthias," she said carefully, "are you talking about us as permanent employees or not as employees?" He interrupted her. "As a family. I know it's complicated. I know you have your own life, your own dreams, but this last month showed me what I've been missing all these years." Omar started crying, interrupting the conversation. Gabriella immediately got up to comfort him, and Matthias wondered if he had ruined everything with his sudden honesty. "He's just tired," Gabriella said, rocking the baby. "I'm going to put him to bed, and then we'll continue talking." Matthias nodded as he watched her go upstairs with Omar. He was left alone in the living room, surrounded by the children's toys and the aroma of coffee still coming from the kitchen. For the first time in weeks, the silence of the house did not seem welcoming to him. 20 minutes later, Gabriella came downstairs. She sat down on the couch next to him closer. This time Omar fell asleep. He said softly, "Gabriella, I said too much." "No," she interrupted him. "You didn't say too much. In fact, it's good that you were honest, because I need to be honest too." Matthias turned to look at her. "I'm also confused about what we're building here," she continued. "At first it was just a job, but you're not what I thought you would be. You play with the children, you worry if Gabriel did well on his exam, you buy ice cream for Natalia when she's sad, and you treat me as an equal. Not as an employee, because you're not my employee," Matthias said. "Not anymore. Maybe you never really were." Gabriella smiled slightly. "So what are we?" It was a fair question. And Matthias realized he didn't have a simple answer. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know that when I wake up in the morning and hear their voices in the kitchen, I feel like I'm home for the first time in my life. And I know that when I think about them leaving, about going back to the silence of before, he paused. I can't imagine it. Gabriella was quiet for a moment, then reached out and touched his hand. Matthias said, "What if we try to figure out what we are together, without rushing, without pressure, just seeing where it takes us?" He looked at their intertwined hands and felt a peace he hadn't felt in decades. "I'd like that," he said. At that moment, Gabriella's cell phone rang. She looked at the screen and frowned. "It's Patricia," she said. "I have to answer." "Sure." Gabriella answered this phone in Spanish, and Matthias could only hear her side of the conversation. But he could tell from her tone that they were discussing something important. When she hung up, she looked worried. "What happened?" he asked. "My mom is better," Gabriella said slowly. "Much better than the doctors expected. Patricia said she can go back to Mexico City next week." Matthias felt his stomach drop. "She wants to take the kids back," Gabriella said, and he could see tears forming in her eyes. "She said she misses them and that I've already imposed too much on her life. But what about their school? Gabrielle was doing so well." "I told her, but she's their mother, Matthias. It's her decision." They fell silent, both taking in the news. Matthias realized that he had grown accustomed not only to the children's presence, but to the idea that they would be there forever. "What about you?" he asked without turning around. "Are you going with them?" There was a long pause before Gabriella answered. "I don't know," she said. "Patricia is going to live with my mom for now to help her with her recovery. There's no room for me there, but I don't know if I can stay here without the kids either. It would be different." Matthias turned to look at her. She was crying silently, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "It would be different," he nodded, "but maybe it could still work. The two of us discovering who we are without rushing, remember?" Saturday came faster than Matthias had expected. He was in the garden pushing Omar on the swing he had installed the week before when he heard a car approaching. Gabriel and Natalia ran from the pool, still wet, shouting, "Mommy! Mommy!" Patricia almost got out of an old car carrying 2 travel bags. She was younger than Gabriella, 25, but she looked tired. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was wearing faded jeans and a simple blouse. The children threw themselves into her arms, and Matthias watched the reunion from afar, feeling a mixture of joy and melancholy. Omar, who hadn't seen his mother in almost 2 months, was shy at first, hiding behind Gabriella's legs. "My love, how you've grown," said Patricia, kneeling down to Omar's height. "Don't you remember Mommy?" Gabriella gently pushed Omar toward his mother. "Come on, sweetheart, it's your Mommy." After a few minutes of hesitation, Omar let Patricia pick him up, and soon he was smiling and babbling happily. "Patricia, this is Matias Campos," Gabriella said, making the introductions. "Mr. Campos," Patricia said, extending her hand. "I can't thank you enough for what you've done for my family. It was a pleasure to have the children here," Matias replied sincerely. "They brought joy to this house." Patricia looked around, clearly impressed by the size of the property. "Gabriel told me about the pool, but I didn't imagine it would be this big." "Would you like me to show you around the house?" Gabriella offered. While the 2 sisters and the children took a tour of the house, Matthias sat on the balcony watching the clouds gather in the sky. It rained frequently in the afternoons in September in Mexico City, and he could feel the humidity in the air. An hour later, everyone gathered in the living room. Patricia held Omar on her lap, while Gabriel and Natalia sat next to her on the couch. "The children told me that they have a very good routine here," Patricia said to Matthias. "Gabriel said that you help him with his homework. He's very smart," Matthias replied. "In fact, they all are. You should be proud." Patricia smiled, but Matthias noticed that she seemed worried about something. "Mr. Campos," she said cautiously, "can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you do this? Letting the children live here, taking care of them, isn't exactly what a boss would normally do." Matthias looked at Gabriella, who was sitting quietly in an armchair, then at the children. "Because your sister showed me what a real family means," he said simply, "and your children taught me how to laugh again." Patricia studied his face for a moment, then looked at Gabriella. The 2 sisters exchanged a look that Matthias couldn't decipher. "Mommy," Gabriel said suddenly, "can I stay here a little longer? I like my new school, and Uncle Matthias promised to teach me how to play chess. I want to stay too," Natalia added. "I have a new friend, Julieta. And it's her birthday next week. Patricia looked at the children, then at Gabriella, and finally at Matthias. Kids, she said softly, you know I missed you a lot, and Grandma wants to see how much you have grown too. But we can visit Grandma, argued Gabriel, and you can stay here too. The house is really big. Matthias saw Gabriella close her eyes for a moment, clearly moved by the children's desire. Gabriel, it's not that simple, Patricia said. Why not? Gabriel insisted. Uncle Matthias has lots of space, and Aunt Gabby is a great cook. We can be one big family. There was an awkward silence. Patricia looked at Matthias with an expression that was difficult to interpret. Mr. Campos, she said, can I talk to you in private? Sure, let's go to the study. They got up, and Matthias led Patricia to his study on the first floor. She closed the door behind them and sat down in front of his desk. Mr. Campos, Matthias, she began, I need to be direct with you. My children have grown fond of you, and that worries me. Why? Because they have already lost so much in life. Gabriel's dad abandoned us when he was 2 years old. Natalia's father promised to come back and never showed up again. And now they're becoming attached to you, creating illusions about families and permanence. Matthias leaned forward. Patricia, I understand your concern, but I have no intention of disappearing from their lives. You can say that now, but what about in 6 months, a year, when the novelty wears off and you get tired of having children running around your house? It was a fair question, and Matthias knew it. He thought carefully before answering. Patricia, he said at last, I'm 48 years old. I spent the last 20 years building a business empire, making money, buying expensive houses and cars. But until I met your family, I didn't know what I was missing. For the first time in my life, I wake up every morning looking forward to going downstairs to have breakfast with you. For the first time, this house feels like a home. Patricia studied him silently, and Gabriella asked, how does she fit into all this? Matthias felt his face flush. Gabriella is special. She's more than I deserve, honestly, but I hope she wants to discover with me what we can build together. Are you in love with my sister? It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Matthias realized there was no point in denying it. Yes, he said simply. I am. Patricia nodded slowly. And she knows. We're talking about our feelings, deciding together which path to take. Mr. Matthias, Patricia said, leaning forward, I'm going to be honest with you. My sister has spent her whole life taking care of everyone. Of me. When I got pregnant very young, of the children when I needed to work, of our mom when she got sick. She's never had the chance to think about her own future, her own dreams. I know. Then you must know that if she stays here, it has to be because she wants to, not because she feels obligated to take care of the children or because she thinks she has to do it for me. Matthias nodded. I completely agree. Patricia was silent for a long moment, staring out the study window. The children are happy here, she said at last. Happier than I've seen them in a long time. And Gabriella seems different too. Lighter. She's incredible with them, said Matthias. They love her like a second mother. I know, and maybe, Patricia paused, maybe that's what they need. A stable family, a routine, opportunities that I can't give them on my own. Matthias waited, not wanting to pressure her. If she let the children stay, he said slowly, it would be under certain conditions. What conditions? First, I want to visit them regularly. They're still my children. Of course. Second, if at any time you decide you no longer want this responsibility, give me plenty of notice so I can make arrangements. You can count on that. And third, he hesitated. Take care of Gabriella. She deserves to be happy. Matthias felt something tighten in his chest. I'll take care of all of you, Patricia. I promise. Patricia stood up and held out her hand. Then it's a deal. They returned to the living room where they found Gabriella reading a book to the children. Gabriel and Natalia were curled up next to her on the couch, and Omar was on the floor playing with blocks. Children, said Patricia, come here. I need to talk to you. The children approached, and Patricia knelt down to be at their level. Do you really want to stay here? She asked. Yes, Gabriel shouted immediately. Me too, Natalia said timidly. Omar is too young to understand, Patricia said, but he seems happy here too. She looked at Gabriella. And you, sister, what do you want? Gabriella looked at the children, then at Matthias, and finally at Patricia. I want us all to be happy, she said. If the children stay here, I'll stay too. Someone has to take care of them. No, Matthias interrupted gently. Gabriella, you need to stay because you want to, not because you feel obligated. All eyes turned to her. Gabriella was silent for a long moment. I want to stay, she said finally in a firm voice. Not just for the children. I want to discover what we can be, Matthias. All of us together. Gabriel jumped for joy and Natalia clapped her hands. Omar, not understanding what was happening, but infected by the joy of the others, began to laugh. Patricia hugged the children. Then it's decided. You're staying here, but I'll visit you every month. Okay. Can you stay for dinner tonight? Gabriel asked. I can, Patricia blushed. I want to see if Aunt Gabby has learned to cook fancy dishes in this big house. Later that night, after Patricia went to sleep in the guest room and the children went to bed, Matthias and Gabriella found themselves on the balcony looking at the stars. Are you sure, Matthias asked, about giving you all this? Gabriella turned to look at him. And you, with more certainty than anything else in my life. So yes, she said, smiling. I'm sure too. They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the nighttime sounds of the city in the distance. Matthias, Gabriella said, thank you. For what? For giving us a chance, for seeing something in us that was worthwhile. Matthias took her hand. Thank you for showing me what really matters in life. And for the first time in years, Matthias Campos felt truly rich, not because of the money in the bank or the properties he owned, but because of the family he had unexpectedly found in a small house in the doctor's neighborhood. Sometimes starting over isn't going back to the beginning, it's just choosing a new path. And sometimes the best families are the ones we choose, not the ones we are born into. If you like this story, comment below, share it with your friends, and subscribe to hear the next ones.